Okay, so I already mentioned that I'm super happy about our next two guests and really grateful that they were able to come and that they were so nice to visit Slovakia and talk about their experiences with the e-government. I'd also like to mention that in the afternoon program we have a smaller session behind closed doors to discuss with the people who are related to e-government. And some of you have got the invitation. The others who are interested in this event to discuss e-government in a deeper detail, please come over to me and we can talk because we have still some free spots. So it will be very nice. If you're interested, you can then join. So our first speaker is Risto Hinno. He's advisor in the Estonian Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications. And he's currently a project manager managing a project mapping public services in Estonia. Previously, he worked as chief specialist in the service department in the Estonian Tax and Customs Board. And he's going to talk about how Estonia improves usability and quality of public services. The only thing that I'd like to mention is that we all know that e-government is a very relevant topic for us here, but I've seen his presentation and I think it's very relevant for businesses as well. So it doesn't matter what kind of stakeholder you are, I think it will be very interesting, and I'm very happy that Risto can be here, so please.
So hello, my name is Risto Hinno. I'm from Estonia, and before I'm going to talk about public services, a little bit about me. As it was already mentioned, I work in Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications, but our department is kind of a special because we have to deal with public services if every ministry is whole of the public sector. So we are in this ministry, but we do work that is all over the public sector. And I previously worked in Tax and Customs Board, and I started from service desk, so I know what the clients look like and what they want. And by education, I should know something about data science and financial management. In my presentation, I'm a little bit going to talk about where we are in Estonia at the moment, what are the good things, but mostly I want to tell you about things that I think we are not so good at and what we need to really improve and how we are trying to do it. So for the beginning, I would like to, everybody who has been working with public sector or in public sector in previous year, could you raise your hand so I know how many of you there are? Okay. Because I'm going to talk about mostly what we do in public sector, so I know how to focus to you. So this is a question that if you ask it from Estonians, they would like to say, oh, Estonia, it's the greatest e-state of them all. Well, it depends on what you look at. If you look at some of the numbers, yeah, they're pretty good. When I was working in Tax and Customs Board, then most of the tax returns were submitted via electronic channels, like 95% of them at least. So yeah, it's kind of a great, and we'll have a lot of e-prescriptions and stuff like that. And it depends on the reports. International reports show us that in some cases we are very high, in some cases we're not so high. They measure different things. And in Estonia, we have very different views about that. Well, most of the success story at the moment that where we have reached is based on the things that we did like 10, 15, some even 20 years ago. I wouldn't say they are very innovative anymore, but they work. First of all, what is behind the success is that every Estonian citizen has a national ID, so we have an ID code, we can identify people, and everybody has to have ID card, which is on the far right corner in there, which means basically you can access all the online services. You can log in, you can give digital signatures, and you don't have to fill in the papers. If if you want more convenience, you don't have to have any ID card. You might have only mobile ID, which basically means you have to have your mobile phone to give signatures and to sign in online accounts. And basically all the digital signatures are equal to paper signatures. And well, this itself doesn't create any success stories. You can log in, but so what? One big part of it is based on the infrastructure. In this left side, you can see the solution that we called X-Road. Basically, what approach we took, this decision was made like 15 years ago that we are not going to build one big centralized database where we gather all the data that we have in public sector. But instead of that, every institution has their own databases which they need. And if I'm an institution who needs some data, then I can get this data by X-Road. I use a public internet, but it's, I would say, information highway, which is secured. It was not easy to implement this solution because it was made, I think, about 15 years ago, so it's quite old. But nobody wanted to use it at the beginning. When the ID card came out, then people were skeptical of, why do you need that ID card? We have passports. You have had passports for 70 years. Why? Strange things. And if you want to do innovation in public sector, then you have to make it mandatory. And this is one way that we approached. In the case of X-Road, I know we had one guy who was kind of a marketing to inside the public sector. At the beginning, nobody was listening to him. He went into the door. He was kicked out and go hell with your X-Road. He came through the windows. He was kicked out. He came through the chimneys. And finally, if you find some of those authorities that kind of broke, okay, let's try it, and it kind of scaled up, in the end we made it mandatory, so you basically cannot build up your alternative ways. You have to use this system if you want to exchange high relevancy data. And this is a part that which happens in public sector, that you really cannot rely on institutions to come along with you, because the ones that come along with you are usually the ones that are very mature, but the ones who really need help, they don't really care about that. So it's kind of sad that you have to make it mandatory. But, well, this was the short introduction what we are good at. I was not going to talk about that Estonia is the greatest country in the world and we know everything and we have solved all the problems. No, we haven't. I would be probably a very bad sales guy for Estonia because I see the problems every day. And I would say there is some part of this e-government stuff in Estonia, it's kind of a marketing. I had one of my friends who was trying to submit one application and he needed a child birth certificate for that because he had this kind of expectations that we are a cool e-country, I could do it online. But he found out that he couldn't do it online, he had to go to the service bureau. And of course he was filing the application on the last day when he could, so it got very busy on that day. So what's the problem? Is that this success story so far has based on IT, infrastructure. Somebody made right decision 15 years ago, developed some software that was quite unique. But now we have new challenges because clients don't want just some kind of e-services, they want good e-services. In the end, they don't want even services from the public sector in the sense that you don't want to file in any applications. The problem is that in Estonia, we really don't know are the services with optimal quality and cost ratio because, well, costs are important. Public sector knows how to count the money. Ministry of Economic Affairs, we got to rely on that. But the other part is the quality. Not the cheapest services are with the highest quality. So sometimes you maybe have to make services which are more expensive, but also with higher quality. But in a sense, the problem is that we really don't know what is the level. And this is kind of my job, or the department where I work in, to figure out what is the number of services, what is quality and cost ratio, and how can we improve those things. And my department is like 5 years old, so we have used many ways to improve things. But before I'm going to talk about how we try to improve things, I'll give a brief overview how we approach to public sector. This is kind of X-ray of public sector in our sense. Because every time I talk about services, public services, everybody kind of knows what I'm talking about. After 1 hour, I understand that nobody understands nothing because everybody means different things behind the service. So this is what I'm trying to explain. In the far left, we have this small tower, it's ministry. Usually they are very high-level things. They do policy there, the international relationships, and not much of end-user services in there. Usually where the services happen are in the next layer, where you see like 4 groups of people are sub-authorities. You want to get a driving license, you go to road authority. You want to pay taxes, you go to Tax and Customs Board. And inside there, we see everybody is kind of a service provider. The end goal is to make the end user happy, the client happy. But inside there, we have a lot of support services, but they are also supporting, they're serving. And also, people like you who work in companies do usability. We outsource a lot of things from private sector. They're also kind of serving us. And the end use is to make the client happy. And what I mean by making client happy is bringing value, which is far on the right. The things that we should provide in public sector, healthcare, national defense, education, stuff like that. Now, the problem is that usually you don't get the value directly. You have this bureaucracy layer there. And we call this bureaucracy layer public services. If you want to go and see a doctor, you have to book your time. You maybe have to pay some fee. That's bureaucracy. It's needed. Sometimes bureaucracy is probably never going to be a zero. But the problem is that if you screw up this layer, you might not reach to the value. One example from Estonia, where we have one hospital which I wanted to visit. I wanted to book a time. They had an online solution for that. I went to the homepage, and it said that it's under development. I asked from my colleagues, and they told me that the sign has been there for 3 years. Okay, 3 years development, okay. I choose the next channel. Let's call them. I phoned them, and they told me, oh, we don't have any free times for next month. You have to call next month to get three times. I called them on the next month and told me, oh, we don't have any times left because they were all booked on the first day of the month. So basically I have to call like 9 o'clock in the morning on the first day of the month, because if you do it 10 minutes later, you're not going to get any free times. You have to call next month. So even if this hospital has world greatest doctors, it's no use to me. I can't reach there because of this layer. And this is thing that we are directly working on. I'm not going to tell you how to make national defense or social welfare. I'm a little bit uneducated for that. But I'm going to talk about how we try to optimize and make it more better for users to get through the bureaucracy. And everything they do, all the processes, all the activities inside our authorities, ministries, should be towards creating value. If it doesn't create any value, then you should cut it. And also one thing that is usually coming to mind when we talk about public services is that you don't have any competition, so why should we care about that? you're not going to run away. You have to pay your taxes anyway. It doesn't depend on how bad our services are. Well, we shouldn't really think about that in that sense, because we should try to create more value and start thinking about the human way. And there are services in public sector, for example, where we have to use power. If police is going to arrest you if you're a criminal, this is a service that needs to be done. But in that sense, it's still a service. Yeah, you're not basically serving the guy who you're arresting, but you're serving the society, because you're creating the value that it's safer on the streets. You don't have criminals walking there with knives. So this kind of approach basically fits in most of the things we do in public sector. And this is a thing that we are trying to sell and push through so that different ministries would start thinking towards that. Because usually what happens is that those ministries are very high level. They have very little connection with sub-authorities. They produce the laws, and in the field where authorities work, they can't do the stuff because of the laws were written by people who don't know what is going on in the field. So what we want is value, what we get is bureaucracy. I've been working in this department for 3 years, and the first phase was basically this department to kind of state out what are the problems, as I was telling you before. And the next step was, okay, let's start doing something about that. And when we talked to different institutions, they told us, okay, let's think about client value, yeah, good, but we don't know how to do it. We haven't done it before. We figured out, yeah, it's reasonable if I would tell you, build me a plane, you probably wouldn't be able because you don't have skills. So we started with pilot projects and produced a lot of guidelines, how to do things, how to get hands-on approach, make practical stuff. And usually what happened when we were talking to the people in public sector, they thought that things we are talking about, the value and stuff, hey, that's IT thing. I'm not IT guy, the IT people should know that. It's not IT thing. It is related to everybody in this institution. Everybody should know what value do they bring, what processes, what kind of value should they bring. And so we tried to kind of put them on the field and let's show them it's not something very difficult. You don't have to do any coding. You have to have some understanding what you're doing. But in the end, the step one, I would say, was, in that sense, failure. It didn't change very much because we made a lot of guidelines. We saw institutions that were mature enough. They were using the guidelines. They were wanting to have the pilot projects because they saw that they could save their cost on that. But institutions that didn't have high-level maturity, they didn't care about that. And they usually ask me, okay, but we have this kind of laws here, and no law says that I have to do that. So what you're talking about? So we understand that the voluntary approach is not going to work if you want to really scale it up. Step two, money is a language that everybody understands. And luckily enough, in our ministry, we provide investment money for ICT solutions. In Estonia, most of the ICT investments are made from European funds. So this is a part where we thank German taxpayers. And what we understand is, okay, everybody wants to have money, they want to build systems. Okay, but let's write in this approach that before you build a system, you really have to understand what is the value of it. It was very difficult in the beginning. When we changed the rules, we asked authorities, list all the projects that you want to do in the next year. We got 300 projects. Of those 300 projects, about 10 were mature enough to get the funding. Rest of them, we really couldn't understand. I work in the commission, I assess the applications. What is going to be the measurable value, or what is going to get better? We don't satisfy with the idea that everything is going to get better, or sun is getting sunnier and grass getting greener. It has to be something measurable and understandable. And we want to be assured that you know your clients. So we saw that it was kind of hard for them. And we made special funds for analysis. Before you come and ask money for investment, you have to have a clear picture what you want and why. And by that, I mean, what kind of value are you going to create? To whom? What are the problems at the moment? And how much do you solve them? And it would be very good if we could measure it some way. And this fund has been used quite a lot. I think we have been using it for like 2 years. We have had more than 50 applications in there. And it has improved the quality of applications because now they know more about their clients. We push them to think through. And of course, there are even cases where if your maturity is very low, that you're not going to get money even for analysis funds because you really don't know what you even want to analyze. But there are very rare cases. Usually, analysis help. And also what is important part is that if analysis phase ends, you have to make a decision. You don't analyze just cool to know. I'm going to read in the evenings when I'm going to bed. It has to have some value. You have to make a decision. Okay, we analyzed now. We had this problem. We think this might help. Are we going to continue? Does analysis shows us that things are going to improve with this solution or not? It's okay to say, let's kill the project because it's not going to create any value, or it's going to be too expensive, or we need more information. And also, if you are already quite mature, you can get money for usability analysis to understand if you have, what is wrong with your website, your solution. But usually the problems are deeper inside the organizations. So one example for analysis was Estonian Road Authority. This was their self-service environment like 2 years ago, which was a cool Excel table, but nobody used it because it was very, very complicated, and you would have to have few PhD degrees to understand what is going on in there. And why do I like their approach? They didn't start from, okay, let's make the interface okay, re-engineer their whole organization. They first started to asking the questions, who are our clients? What is the value we create? Why do we do the things we do? It took them like year and a half to get this understanding, and then they could design the new solution. And well, the new one, at least looks better. It's only in Estonian, but if you want to change the mass of your car, you don't have to fill in forms with 50 items. You can just use slider or drop down. So yeah, no brainer for that. But this is kind of a result of doing things better. And usually I can pretty well predict what is the maturity level of institution based on the web page. Because if inside your organizations you don't know what you're going on, it's going to reflect on your web page. And it's kind of a great indicator. So if you have now analyzed, you understand that we are going to build some kind of solution. The solution itself, we don't only want to know, okay, what kind of system are you going to build and what kind of platform are you going to use. We also want to know, are you going to change the law? How are you going to implement it? Because we already know that if you don't engage other institutions in early phases, you're going to fail. If you don't engage users, don't understand their problems, you're going to fail. And the development part is also where we change the rules. His maximum amount of money which you could get is 500,000 euros. We don't want to see 3 years projects that are going to cost like 5 million euros. because I can predict you it's 90% of chance that you are going to fail with this project. So if you have a very big project, we have some areas where it is, the whole project is going to cost like 3 million euros or 5 million euros. We tell them you have to cut it into chunks. Start from the chunks. Estonian Road Authority made this thing. They didn't build their whole new website or self-service environment. They first implemented one service, looked what happened, learned from the failures, then took the second service and third and so on. You can kind of be more agile and adapt to the users. And this is what I mean by openness by design. That you first engage users, and you also, what I would really like to see is that we would open up our code and open up the data that we use. Because we have a lot of data in public sector which is public, but it's not open. And this is also the part that we, Estonia, is not very good at, is open data. Usually the analysis where they analyze open data for different countries, we are behind or in the middle there. And also the modularity, which is build things in a chunk so that you can adopt new changes. And also, if you have very cool ideas how to measure something or to analyze something, we have special funds for analytics and open data. For example, we have one pilot project at the moment where we try to read out emotions of clients based on the emails they wrote. So we will understand, are they happy with our services or not? So you don't have to ask satisfaction from customers directly. And what are the topics they're writing you about? But in the end, I would say this kind of funding approach still didn't produce the results we wanted, because if you adopt a law, everybody will adopt the behavior. So for one application, for one project, they wrote us nice applications that we know the value and we do da 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 da. But in reality, we saw that it was not a systematic approach. Many of the cases, it was just one project. So we understand that kind of way we are talking about that we don't know what is the quality and thing of public services. Many people were telling us, oh, we are very high level. So we made the decision that, okay, if it's very high level, let's map it and make it public then. And this is where the project that I'm working on now, mapping public services. And we made a service catalog, just very simple web page form where you fill in the data about the services and we make it public. And it's machine readable format also available. And why I call it service leaks is like when we opened up this thing and I show it to higher managers, some of them were scared at the moment. Told us, guys, you have to close it down because we have to make those things correct and then we can open it. We told them no, because we have been telling you this like 5 years, and the things are happening in public sector are for the public money, and basically taxpayers have a right to know what is going on. And this is basically the form that we have now. You can search for the services. We have 1,500, 1,600 services there. So if you're a really customer, good luck. If you go to a restaurant, you have 1,500 items in the menu. I don't know which to pick. But this shows a quality of our understanding about public services and how we manage them in Estonia. And why managers were a little bit scared. This is some basic statistics from the catalog. Was because we basically don't measure our services. We don't even know how many transactions do we have per year. Not to talk about satisfaction rate or how much time do you the clients have to waste there, or how much do they cost to public sector. So, okay, when we are talking about service management, we don't have the data, you really can't manage them in a sense. So this is a phase that we are at the moment. We don't have much of the data. We know which of authorities measure something, which are very high level in that. But at the same time, there are authorities that do not know what is going on. And this is just, I would say, fun part of it. I took all the service descriptions of catalog and the service names. I used one simple model, neural networks. I'm not going to explain it in deeper. Basically, what it shows is all the words that are closer together have similar meaning in our service catalog. So from there, we can see that state is like obligation, control, and service and person are quite far away. And if you surf in the catalog, this is pretty much the site you have. We are the state, we order you to do that, we have the obligations to do that, and you have to do that. But yeah, services, people, clients, why? And this is basic level that we are at the moment. I would say one of the core problems, why are we in this state, as I mentioned earlier, is that we don't have owners in many services. This is a little bit statistics about how many services do we have per ministries. And the red part shows the proportion of services that don't have owners. I'm not going to say about the services that have owners that those owners are really acting as owners, but at least there is somebody who can contact to. So if you don't have owners, there's not much to do. I can't talk about measuring because there's nobody to talk to. We have people who are dealing with finances, we have people who are dealing with laws, dealing with IT, but we don't have this kind of mature layer of people who are facing the client and understanding how does this mix of things look for the client and do we create any value. And this is a part that we're going to need because IT so far in Estonia has brought a lot of value, but we need to move on. Not only the IT, but we need also the service owners. Somebody who takes care of the clients. Because in many cases, there's notorious cases where, for example, if you want to build a tramway in Estonia, we have tramway in Tallinn. You want to fill in the application to build a tramway or extend the existing one. There's a question which is asking you, how many toilets are you going to build on the tramway? So how many tramways have you seen where there are toilets on the tramway? So somebody just took some application for building permit and changed it to tramway building permit, but didn't even look at what kind of information to be asked because they didn't have the owner. And the data that we have now, much more or less, we can use it to understand what is the, I would say, average maturity of an Estonian public sector in service management. Use this simple model, 5 levels, where level 1 is basically you don't know what is going on, you're extinguishing fires, stuff happen. Level 2 is that, okay, you already understand something is going on, that you're providing some services. You have a simple list. Level 3 is that you have list and you have owners. There's somebody who's responsible for services. Level 4 is that, okay, there's somebody responsible, but they're also measuring. They have facts based on what they can make decisions. And level 5 is kind of a nirvana where things are going smoothly and you're improving constantly. It's part of everyday life. In Estonia, we are, I would say, 2.5 level. There are ministries where many services don't have owners. So if I approach them, I first have to tell them, okay, you have to find the owners, because if you don't have owners, we're not going to improve anything. In level 3 authorities, we can get more detail with them to understand how to measure the services and what are the problems why we don't measure things. And one simple, I would say, case study from that, as I told you, we made a lot of guidelines and pilot projects. We also had one company dealing with usability in Estonia, which helped us to make kind of methodology, how to measure usability when you really don't want to ask it from the client, or you don't want to interact with client to get the answer. So basically, if you have kind of web page system, you have to first understand what are the client groups, what is their goal in the system. When you can say that they have failed or they have succeeded, you have to have some kind of indicators there. It's not going to be 100% accurate, but it's going to help you. And based on those indicators, you can work out the KPIs. And I like the idea, the approach, because you really have to understand what is going on. But the problem was in reality that we couldn't get the data, because nobody was thinking about that when they were developing the systems. To get the data out of systems after development is pretty tricky, because I've seen logs which are basically useless to track processes. I've seen many systems where you can't get even basic numbers out. How many transactions did you do? Because nobody thought about that somebody's going to need the data. This is a part that we also try to push into analysis phase, that you have to figure out what is going on future with the system and what kind of data do you need. Because now if you want to develop this system so that you would get the data out of it, it's going to cost you a lot. And for future plans, to get more general view where we want to go, everything we do, we try to understand what is the value of it. It should create some value. If you want to buy a server, we want to know what kind of value is it going to create the end user. If you don't know, then you don't need this server. But as I told you that we have now like 1,500, 600 services in service catalog, it's not usable for end users. You're not going to find the things you need, because first of all, there's too much to search for, and those descriptions are not made for humans, they're for officials working in public sector. But what we want to do is basically to combine those services together, so that, for example, if you are getting married, usually when you get married, you have to consume many services. You have to file in applications. I had the experience a few months ago when my wife had to change like 3 documents. She had to file in 3 applications for 3 different authorities. Which is kind of funny, because at least 1 month before we got married, public sector already knew that we are going to get married on that day, and she's going to change her name. It's 99.9% of chance that we are going to get married on that day. It's very small chance that, well, some couples don't get married on that day, but it's very small chance. But why don't we act on that? We know that we have this data, and it's no brainer that I want to have documents where there is my correct name on it. What is the value of my application filing? It's no value. After getting married, they could send me the new documents. It's very simple. But the problem relies that there are different institutions, different ministries, and cooperation itself is very tough subject in public sector. Another situation is when a child is born, you have also a lot of services there. Kindergarten, child benefits, whatever things. And you have to really know where to go, what to ask. But in the end, we already have the data. When the child is born, we know already in a database that there's a new person inside there. We could send the email with notifications. And this is a part that we are really trying to kind of pack those things together that we have, those 1,500 services, and make it usable to end user. So provide them things that you really need. They don't need public services, they want the value. Service is just a mean to get there. We also try to understand what is a link between our public services, bureaucracy, and IT services, because they're a little bit living in a separate fields at the moment, but together they both have to create the value. So we want to understand that if Minister of Finance says that, okay, we have to cut our budget like 5%, then we can say that it's going to affect value creation in that way. We're not going to provide this service in that amount anymore. That means that and that and that. So, for example, we don't have so many police patrols on streets, which is going to mean that there are going to be more robberies, for example. And one cool thing is that Finns are also doing their service catalog at the moment, and we try to make cooperation with them, because we are both pretty small countries. We are a very small country, but we have this kind of same ideas, and we think in the same level. That why not to basically, first of all, map the services. So if I would go to Finland and I would start a business, I would understand, would have those services in the list, I would understand what I have to do. But in future, everybody is talking about digital single market. Why not provide joint services between countries? If you want to start business, you start business in Estonia or Finland, but you can do it also in the other country. You don't have to file in any applications anymore. We already have the information. One good thing about that is Finns are also using X-Road, and we are having this kind of joint development, so we basically could connect the base registries that we have at the moment. But we'll see what's going to come out of it. And I don't know how many of you have heard of this residency program that we are having. This is a part where if you are skeptical about what I was talking about, or you want to see yourself, you can basically become an e-resident in Estonia, which means you're going to get like an ID card. You don't have any picture on there, but you can access all the public services that we have, and you can open up a bank account and a business in Estonia. At the moment, you have to make one trip to Estonia to acquire the card, but you don't have to have any trips in Estonia to make a bank account anymore. So this is the part where I, as a kind of service person, think and hope that we'll improve our public services, because if you're Estonian, you might know somebody who will help you through this bureaucracy. If you're a guy from Singapore, Korea, you don't know Estonian and you don't know our systems. So this means that we are going to have to design things much more simpler for them. By doing that, we hope that we could improve things in people who are living in Estonia. So this is a presentation from me. I hope that you got some ideas from here and learned some of the things that what to avoid, that we already have failed for you, and you could take something away from here. Thank you. Okay, and now let's take a few questions. What would you recommend we should do as a first thing in Slovakia to improve the UX of public websites? Well, I think in Estonia, I've seen this kind of approaches where if you really want to improve something, start doing. If you want to improve websites, you could do it yourself and then try to sell it to the authority. And that might be one step that you could do if you are not the owner of the website. Of course, a better way would be to find the owner and try to explain, but usually in Estonia, what we have had is when somebody does something great, make it public, then publicity is going to support you, and the authorities are going to change. They understand, okay, let's acquire this new website, or let's do something. And also, one important part is giving feedback. This is learned from Estonia. Giving feedback is kind of a long tail thing. You give feedback and nothing happens, few years. But sometimes, if you give feedback to right people, they might make some changes. I've seen cases where director generals have got feedback from people who are using, and they really understand, okay, we have to do something about that. And this is also the pain that's going to move them. I hope I answered that question. That's a good question. I came from cooperation. At that time, we had, we're a small country, which means that one person can really make a change in there. And in the beginning or in the ending of the 1990s, we made those decisions. We had, I would say, people who were dealing with a lot of things, who had a great vision, and they implemented on that time, because we didn't have so much rules, so much bureaucracy as we do at the moment. Tried the change. Most of them were working in the public sector at the time, but also cooperation with private sector was very important, because some of the cool ideas came from there. And to be honest, most of the development we do in public sector is outsourced from private sector in Estonia. So in-house coding is not very popular in Estonia, I would say that. And I hope I answered that question, so yeah. Do you think, does it have any purpose to try to change something in e-gov stuff if there is high corruption rate? Any tips how to fight this? Well, I would say if you want to fight with something very big, you start small. I think there is something you can do, even if it's one website, one service, whatever. You can start doing from there and get publicity to do it. Because if you don't do anything, there's definitely nothing going to change. If you do something, there is possibility that something is going to change. And in Estonia, I would say we don't have very big problem with corruption. We have some of it. But we have, I would say, problem with laziness in public sector. We don't want to change. And one way to engage public sector is just, if you want to rock the world, then first rock one service or one institution. If it works, it's very easy to sell to other institutions. For example, I worked in Tax and Customs Board. They had they have many services which are not very good to your clients in the sense that they're going to take your money away. And we measured the satisfaction rate of the clients for those services. So, which meant that if different institutions came to us, like for example, police or prisons, they told us that we can't measure the satisfaction because we have this kind of services. We know they're not satisfied. Then we could show them, okay, but Tax and Customs Board is measuring stuff like that. And what we found out that those satisfaction rates were not the lowest, but the lowest satisfaction rates were for Estonian statistics, where they don't take your money away, you just have to fill in the data. So that shows that there's something very bad going on in Estonian statistics, because they're not taking your money away, but clients are more unhappy than taking your money away. So yeah, but I don't know anything about how to fight with corruption. Well, I've heard ideas even from, for example, from Russia, is just try to open up the data to show them, for example, public procurement data, what is being bought. I think in Russia there was cases where they bought like beds which were made from gold. And so if it's public, then it's kind of embarrassing for those officials. So things are going to change then. I hope you got some answer from that. How long does it usually take from an analysis to see product changes and actual results? That is a good question. It depends highly in approach that public sector authority takes. We have institutions that use, I would say, agile development, which means that like 2 months they have very good products already working with very few mistakes. But that's not usually the case. On average, when we have analysis phase and then we have development, I would say more or less a year, which is still too high or too long. And the problem is that because of the European funding, this is so inflexible. You can't really make changes. You have a lot of bureaucracy there. So, but yeah, we try to change that. So I would say on average it's taking still a year in Estonia, but some institutions manage even few months. What was the total cost of e-government projects in Estonia over the last 5 years? Oh, that's a good question. Because now this is a very good question, because it shows that one big problem that we have in Estonia. But while we were building all the e-gov stuff, we really didn't measure it much. And now we have problems to explain, for example, to universities that why is it good? We don't have the data. We really don't have much data understanding how much did we invest in there and what do you mean by e-gov. But we have for European fundings to 2020, we have like 95 million euros, which we could spend on development and for analysis. But this is our goal is not to spend that money, but our goal is to create value. So if we could, if you don't create value with that money, we're not going to spend it, because we're going to otherwise inflate the prices and create a lot of services that have very low quality. But really, yeah, I don't have an exact answer for you, and I'm not going to lie to figure out the number. So it was a good question. So thank you.